Across the centuries, the Yazidis have learned to exist on the margins of history not by choice, but by necessity. They are an ancient religious minority of the Middle East, with roots reaching deep into Mesopotamian, Iranian, and Sufi traditions. Their faith is monotheistic, closed to conversion, and transmitted orally from generation to generation. This very feature, combined with a theology often misunderstood by outsiders, made them early targets of suspicion, distortion, and persecution. For centuries, the spiritual heart of the Yazidi people has been in northern Iraq, particularly around Mount Sinjar and the sacred valley of Laylish. There, their collective identity took shape, structured around clans, religious castes, and spiritual authorities led by elders and learned leaders. Under the Ottoman Empire and later regimes, the Yazidis endured repeated campaigns of forced conversion and massacres. In their own historical memory, these persecutions are known as firmans, decrees of annihilation. Long before the 21st century, they counted dozens. Yet nothing prepared them for the summer of 2014. In August of that year, fighters of the so-called Islamic State swept into the Sinjar region. Within days, entire villages were emptied. Men and elderly people were executed en masse. Children were torn from their families. Thousands of young women were abducted, registered, and sold into sexual slavery. This was not collateral damage of war. It was a deliberate, systematic attempt to erase a people because of their faith. Tens of thousands fled toward the mountain. With no food, no water, and under the relentless desert sun, families climbed Sinjar to escape certain death. 4 days, they were trapped at its summit, surrounded, waiting either to die or to be rescued. Images of abandoned families on the mountain reached the world, but help came too late for many. That episode is now recognized as one of the clearest and most thoroughly documented genocides of the 21st century. Survival did not end the ordeal. It merely transformed it. First came displacement camps inside Iraq and the Kurdistan region. Later, for some, the long road to Europe. They crossed Turkey, the Aegean Sea, and reached Greece hoping to move north. Instead, in 2015 and 2016, thousands became stranded at the border between Greece and North Macedonia, trapped in makeshift camps, caught between sealed frontiers, legal limbo, and unresolved trauma. They had survived genocide, yet still had no place where life could truly begin again. One voice, however, broke through the silence. Nadia Murad, a young Yazidi woman who had been enslaved by the Islamic State and managed to escape, transformed personal suffering into public testimony. Her story gave a human face to the horror endured by thousands. In her book The Last Girl, she described not only her own captivity, but the organized enslavement of Yazidi women as a weapon of war. Her advocacy made her an international symbol of resistance and justice, and ultimately led to her receiving the Nobel Peace Prize. Yet one of the most decisive chapters of this story unfolded quietly, within the Yazidi community itself. After many women were rescued or escaped, the community faced a moral and theological crossroads. Yazidi tradition places strong emphasis on religious purity and endogamy. By any strict reading of ancient rules, women who had been raped and enslaved by outsiders risked exclusion. The spiritual leaders chose a different path. In an unprecedented declaration, Yazidi elders and religious authorities announced that these women remained fully Yazidi, without stigma or blame. What had been done to them would not be held against them, now or ever. Responsibility lay solely with the perpetrators. This decision marked a conscious break with centuries of rigid doctrine, driven by a clear understanding of the violence inflicted. It was not merely a religious ruling, it was an act of collective survival. Today, more than a decade later, the situation remains deeply fragile. Many villages near Mount Sinjar are still destroyed, militarized, or unsafe. Competing armed groups, lack of basic services, and political neglect make return difficult. Some Yazidis have gone back, many cannot or will not. Trauma, the absence of full justice, and fear of repetition weigh heavily. In Europe, especially in Germany, Yazidi communities are slowly rebuilding their lives, striving to preserve language, rituals, and memory. They know that exile can save lives, but it can also erode identity. Returning to Sinjar is not simply a matter of desire, it requires real security guarantees, reconstruction, and political recognition. The story of the Yazidis is not only one of devastation, it is the story of a people who, when pushed to the edge of disappearance, refused to fracture from within. They changed what once seemed unchangeable in order to remain themselves, and in that quiet, resolute decision lies perhaps their most profound act of resistance. To this day, the Yazidi genocide is not only a matter of the past. Women and girls remain in captivity, hidden from public view, trapped in slavery networks that outlived the territorial defeat of the Islamic State. The case of Fawzia Amin Saido is stark evidence of this reality. Abducted in 2014 near Mount Sinjar at just 11 years old, she endured more than a decade of captivity, moved across conflict zones until she was finally found and freed in Gaza. Her rescue in 2024 was extraordinary, the result of rare international cooperation. Yet it does not close the wound. Many of the missing have not returned. For this reason, the Yazidi story cannot end with remembrance alone. As long as survivors remain unaccounted for, and as long as safe return to Sinjar is uncertain, the genocide remains unfinished, not as history, but as an ongoing injustice.